Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN Sunday for Sunday, February 21st, 2021. We've got a great show for you today. I'm going to be joined by members of the media, academia, and financial services as we analyze all the information and news this week in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of BRN Sunday. Let's kick things off with a look at personal finance. Joining us on the line, she is a prolific writer with The Motley Fool. She covers personal finance a lot more. You also see her writing in millionacres.com and so many other places. Let's welcome to the program Ms. Mari Backman. Mari, great to have you back on the program this morning.
Thanks, Jeff. Happy to be here.
Yeah, always great. I hope you're not snowed in or not feeling the too bad the effects of some inclement weather that seems to be rolling across our great country.
You know, Jeff, out here on the East Coast, I think it snowed like every other day in February, and today's no exception. We're getting another 8 inches, and it just seems like every time we dig out, we get more. But you know, kind of sounds like a lot of people's debt problems when you think about it.
Absolutely.
Well, we're managing. We're used to it.
Well,
yeah.
good.
Today, I wanted to talk about a tax topic that might be coming up because the IRS started accepting tax returns about a week ago. So you've got till April 15th to file your return. So there's still time for people to get that done. Let's be clear. No need to panic just yet. But the sooner you file your taxes, obviously, the sooner you get any refund that you're due. So you may want to get moving. Also, just as a quick reminder, if you did not receive a stimulus payment but believe you were entitled to one based on your income, the only way to get that stimulus payment is to claim it on your tax return. So just a couple of reasons to kind of, be thinking about taxes. And while we're on that topic, so, last year, obviously, when the coronavirus pandemic first exploded, a lot of people were hit really hard financially. And I mean, a lot of people are still struggling today. But so, pretty much immediately after the crisis broke, lawmakers passed the CARES Act. It was signed into law at the very end of March, and it included a host of provisions basically designed to provide financial relief during the crisis. So the stimulus payments we just talked about, that first round of $1,200 checks, that was part of the CARES Act. So another thing that the CARES Act allowed you to do was to take an early withdrawal from your retirement savings if you were impacted by the pandemic. So normally, when you have money in an IRA or 401k, one of those plans, you're not allowed to touch that money until you reach age 59 and a half. And if you do take a withdrawal for a non-exceptioned reason prior to that, you'll be hit with a 10% early withdrawal penalty. So obviously that's the sort of thing you want to avoid. If you take under normal circumstances, you take a $10,000 withdrawal because you needed to pay bills, well, you'll lose a fact off the bat just, due to that penalty. So that penalty, thankfully, was waived during the CARES Act, under the CARES Act, lawmakers realized that a lot of people were losing jobs, were losing income, they needed money, and they figured, okay, well, why shouldn't we allow people to tap the money that is already theirs? So that was a good thing. But here's how these plans work. When you take a withdrawal from a traditional IRA or 401k, that withdrawal is taxable. And that's not a penalty. That's just how these plans work. It's similar to basically your paycheck. You get a paycheck, you're entitled to a $1,000 paycheck every week, let's just say. Okay, you're not going to take home that $1,000. The IRS is going to take a portion of it. Well, that's how traditional IRAs and 401ks work. The money that you put into those plans actually goes in tax-free. So you get a tax break for making the contribution, but then when you're retired and you start taking withdrawals from one of those plans, you're going to pay taxes on those withdrawals. Those taxes, Jeff, they still apply to emergency withdrawals taken under the CARES Act. Okay? So anyone who took a withdrawal, let's say last year, due to a hardship, maybe that 10% penalty is waived. That's great, but there's still a tax liability there. Now, here's where it gets interesting. And I'm sorry, I'm just talking on and on.
No, it's good. So I'm listening.
Really clear
This is great.
What's going on here. Yeah. So basically, under normal circumstances, when you take a withdrawal from an IRA or 401k, you need to pay taxes on that withdrawal for the year that you took the withdrawal. So if you took the withdrawal in 2020, normally you'd have to pay taxes for 2020. But because, again, this is extenuating circumstances, the IRS is giving tax filers up to 3 years to spread out those taxes. So if you took a withdrawal last year under the CARES Act, you can either pay taxes, all of the taxes on it, when you file your 2020 tax return, or you could divvy it up into thirds and, pay a third for your, under 2020, a third under 2021, and a third under 2022. So that's the tax situation. Now, having said that, a lot of people who were doing really poorly financially last year have since seen their circumstances improve. I mean, the jobless rate back in April was at 14.7%, and, as of January, it was 6.3%. So that's a huge improvement. A lot of people have gone back to work or just things have picked up. So this is what I want to tell people. This is the message I'm really trying to convey. If you took a CARES Act withdrawal last year, but you no longer need that money, you can still put it back. And if that's the case, I would advise people to put it back, and for two reasons. Number one, because obviously the point of putting money into a 401k or IRA is to have that money for retirement, and it's to be able to invest that money between now and retirement and grow it into a larger sum. So the more money that can stay in your plan, the better. But the other thing, Jeff, is that if you put that withdrawal back into your retirement plan, you won't have to pay taxes on it. And those taxes can be pretty significant. I mean, if you took, a $10,000 withdrawal last year due to a hardship, and you're being taxed, let's say 24% of that, because that's your bracket. I mean, so basically that's $2,400 that you're losing to taxes. And even if you break that out into 3 years, I mean, it's still a big tax bill. So if you don't need that money anymore, get it back in there so you don't have to pay taxes on it.
Now, Mari, when it comes to getting it back in there, do you stroke a check? Do you call up, do you call up your service provider, for example, Avoya, Fidelity, Vanguard? Do you call your plan sponsor, your employer? Do you understand that? Do you know the mechanism? What's the best course of action to stroke that check or to send that money back?
Yeah, you'll contact your plan administrator, whether, or financial institution. So if you have a 401k, you could even probably just talk to somebody in your own benefits department and figure out what the easiest way is to get money back in there. It could just be writing a check. I'm not sure if it can be, I don't believe that a CARES Act withdrawal can be put back via payroll deductions. That doesn't really make sense to me. So I would think you would still have to write a check either way. But if you're, let's say, right, like you said, your IRA is with Fidelity, right, you call up, you say, okay, listen, I took this withdrawal last year, and now I want to put more money into my account, what do I need to do? With IRAs especially, 401ks, you get the funds deducted out of your paychecks, so it's pretty automatic. But with an IRA, you're writing a check to yourself either way. So it should be the same kind of mechanism, whatever you do to put money into your IRA, just on a regular year, that's kind of what you'll do now. But yeah, I mean, it's basically, it's pretty simple to just return the funds. And again, to be clear, not everyone is in a position to return those funds, and that's okay. If you took a withdrawal last year because your finances took a hit and you're still in a pretty bad place, then yeah, listen, keep that money. If you took it out to pay for bills, you need to live, do what you need to do. But what I am saying is that if your circumstances have improved, even if you can only return a portion of that withdrawal, it's better to do that, because a lot of people saw, oh, okay, no penalties, great. Let me err on the side of taking out more money. That's fine. You're not getting penalized, but you are still getting taxed.
Yeah, well, that's very good advice. And I think, people should, as you're working, and we'll talk probably in future episodes leading up to tax day about steps you can take. This is one of those things that if you can afford to pay it back, you should probably think about, make sure you're talking, if you're working with a CPA or if you're working with Intuit or one of the programs, that you make sure you account for this and be aware of these rules, because if you're not aware, you could find yourself paying more money than you really could or should. And that's money that could be better served used by you and your family than necessarily by someone else. So really good advice, Mari, and appreciate you, of course, dropping by. And look, I love the soliloquy, so I think you did a great job telling the audience, and we appreciate you having on and look forward to having you on in a few weeks.
Yeah, that was a lot of consecutive words coming out of my mouth at once, Jeff. I do get that. But I think sometimes with these complicated issues, you really want to give the backstory. But I appreciate you having me on and letting me blabber on. And hopefully, maybe we inspired a couple of people to say, hey, okay, I'm going to make a smart tax decision this year. So that's the goal.
Well, coming from you, it's never blabbering. Mari Backman, always a pleasure talking with you. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Bye-bye.
Sounds good, Jeff. Bye.
Welcome back. Now time to shift our gears to technology, and who better to do that for us than Mr. Daniel Klein. He's lead advisor, executive producer for 7 Investing. Dan, great to talk to you as always. Thanks so much for joining us on the program today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And I know that you've been donating your time and helping out, doing some volunteer work. So congratulations on doing that as well.
Absolutely awesome. If you could see, Jeff, how these mass vaccination sites work, we talked about it a little when I did it the first time.
Yep.
The site I was at was supposed to be outside. They transitioned to inside with 50 volunteers, thousands of people coming through, and it didn't miss a beat. It was a really exciting thing to be a part of.
Very cool. Well, thanks for volunteering, and I hope that it was a great experience, and I hope a lot of people get their opportunity to go through the process. Dan, I know there's a lot of stories that you want to talk about. There's, the week is never lacking in terms of stories. But one story I think you wanted to talk about was a TikTok-like application that I think another company is working on. What can you tell us there?
So Google is launching YouTube Shorts, which is a terrible name, which is designed to be a TikTok competitor. It sounds like a pair of shorts. But that said, let's go through all the history, Jeff. And we've seen it 100 times. Like Facebook is launching a Tinder knockoff, or they're going to have their own version of Zoom.
Yeah.
These products almost never amount to anything. So I'm not sure what the benefit is of being like a, Me Too third tier player in these spaces. Like, I get it. If you already have this huge audience for YouTube, maybe you can launch this new product and it'll be meaningful numbers, but I doubt it. And really, I guess the opportunity is if TikTok falls apart, which isn't impossible, then those people will probably go somewhere. But this just seems to me like a sort of endless parade of, hey, that's not the place we go. Like kids who are on TikTok aren't going to go, oh, let's check out something else that has 2% the audience. It seems to me like an impossible zero-sum game.
It kind of is like when your parents went to the school dance with you, or were being the chaperones, right? And they would stand off in the corner, and maybe they would dance a little bit. It kind of feels like that. I'm probably really dating myself because I don't even know if they do school. So I haven't been in high school in 30 years, but I don't even know if they do school socials. But you know what I mean? It feels like, hey, let's just create it because someone else has it. Like people created Zoom, like. Technology, right? I think Amazon is actually working on something similar to that as well. Anyway, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, and that makes sense if you're Microsoft, which already had Zoom-like features to sort of codify that and really make sure you're as good as Zoom. I don't think Microsoft Teams is as good as Zoom, but Microsoft thinks it is. So I think it's one of those scenarios where if you already have the user, and Microsoft had Link, which was pretty much a mix between Slack and Zoom, and they've morphed that into like their Teams video now, that makes sense. You already have a customer base. But this idea that like YouTube is going to take its audience, and what's the difference between a YouTube short and a YouTube video? Like, is there going to be a length limit? Like, it doesn't seem like this is doing anything different or anything new. And I got to be honest, it makes very little sense to me.
So Dan, in terms of, and I have never been on TikTok. I don't know if you go on it, but is the rule of thumb now you have to have like 30-second or 15-second videos? What is the average length on a TikTok video? Do you know?
I have no idea, but they're short. Okay. And I think very specifically, nobody's looking for me on TikTok. Like if somebody,
if you dance, they would. If you dance, they would, David. Dan, excuse me.
That's the problem. There is a lot of bad finance advice on TikTok. Like it does exist, but it's one of those things where like, yeah, if I had a shtick, if I was the rapping finance guy or I juggled while I told you about buy and hold investing, TikTok might be a good platform. But I don't think anybody wants to watch a fairly sane guy just talk. And I will say to people, and it's really important, be very careful of the financial advice you're getting on TikTok, or Facebook or any place. I can't tell you how many times I see people in, semi-credible Facebook groups just going, "Hey, what's a good stock to buy today?" And like people answer, but those people don't have credentials. Like you're not going to walk down the street and be like, "Hey, does this look cancerous to you?" And like that's kind of what investing is. You want to deal with experts.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. And I'm glad you brought that up because that was something that has been really crossing my mind, especially with this GameStop Reddit thread, people driving. And it just has me thinking of bubbles and speculation and people not really getting the information they need to make the wisest decision. And as you know, Dan, because you're in this business as well, and as long as I have been, it's about suitability and your risk tolerance, and those things aren't derived. People on TikTok or, frankly, on this podcast, we're not aware of everyone's suitability or risk tolerance whatsoever.
And be very careful with, I'll call them momentum stocks, like stocks that aren't trading based on their fundamentals. Now, there's always with, tech stocks and things that haven't fully proven their business yet, there's always going to be some people talking and some risk to that. But if the reason you're buying, say, GameStop or AMC is because a lot of people are trying to push the price up, you're the one who's going to lose. Like they
Yeah.
will tell you when they're pushing the price up, they will not tell you when to sell. And look, if you look at GameStop, we've talked about this before, you could fundamentally argue that they have good management, a decent balance sheet, and time to transform their business into something else. The idea, though, that that's going to be a company that's worth 100 times what it was before all this happened, no, that's an argument that it might be worth twice as much as what it is if it becomes a stable, healthy retailer, or even 3 or 4 times. So if you happen to own some because you believed in the company, and that's possible, and you see it go up 1,000%, get out because your thesis is played out. The company's not going to see its metrics increase by 1,000 times. So you want to be very, very careful. And in this market, how many people bought, pharmaceutical stocks because they thought they'd make money on the vaccine? Well, Johnson & Johnson's not making money on the vaccine. Pfizer not making money on the vaccine. You should be buying shares of those companies based on the reasons you'd buy any pharmaceutical company, their pipeline, their management, their marketing, their ability to get it out. Those aren't easy stories. So in general, find people like me, and I don't need to tout myself. Go to the credible people out there that are selling investment services, and find them and do your homework. Don't just take my word for it that I know what I'm doing. Figure out if I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, and don't forget, Dan, FINRA broker check for people who are offering investment advice and guidance. They oftentimes have to be licensed. You can do that on FINRA. So, Dan, I want to change gears because this was another interesting story that you forwarded along to me. There's an Amazon program that lets consumers decide which device the company is going to build next. Is this kind of like a crowdsourcing in reverse?
Yeah, it's kind of a brilliant idea. So Amazon put up 3 products. One of them is a sticky note printer. The other is a smart cuckoo clock, and I'm forgetting what the third one is. And basically, if they get enough pre-orders, they'll make the item. So it's kind of like Kickstarter, but with a company that could. So you won't get charged if they don't make the item. So this is Amazon being able to say like, hey, do people think this is cool? And if they do, they'll make it. I actually think it's really brilliant, and it would not shock me at all to see other major retailers do this. Like, why would you guess as to whether people want, an Amazon cuckoo clock? Why not just ask?
I think that's good. I'm trying to imagine a cuckoo clock like that's a smart clock. I mean, don't we have that? Aren't those called phones?
Yeah, we do. I don't really see the need for like a bird to pop out of my clock and say
Cuckoo.
cuckoo.
Yeah, that's old school.
But that seems very strange. But hey, if people want that for the novelty and Amazon hits its number, that takes all the risk out of that. Imagine if Amazon had done this for the Amazon phone. How many punchlines we would not have because that phone never would have existed.
Yeah, well, I think you're right on that, but interesting tact, I would say, from a company, and if you want, look, a lot of fun companies do that, right? They gauge the market. They say, okay, well, here's going to be the next big trend. It's suitability, or sustainability, ESG. Let's build something there, and they kind of go out and they kind of poll the constituency, consultants, advisors, and people who are allocators of assets, and they say this is where we think we want and we like it. I guess the same could be said in technology. Don't you agree, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, companies should be using their technology, their customer relationships to make smart choices. So this doesn't just have to be, products. Let's say you were a big fan of Zoom, and Zoom went to its user base, or we're on Skype right now. If Skype went to its user base and said, hey, here are the 3 things we're thinking about tackling next, we'd be fine with any of them, and asked its customers, well, whichever one won the vote would be guaranteed to be the thing the most customers wanted.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many ways to do this that just democratize everything, and that takes risk out of it. It's something I do a lot of times with my show. I'll just like go to Twitter and I'll say, what do you want me to talk about tomorrow? And people will, oftentimes have something they want us to talk about.
Do they ever ask you about GameStop? Just kidding.
For a week, we did nothing but, pretty much.
Okay, Dan. Well, one story I wanted to ask you about. We're recording this on a Thursday afternoon. It's about 2:07 p.m. But I had to talk to you about this because you and I are both techies. You like Star Wars and space. I wanted to ask you about this Perseverance lander that by the time this airs on Sunday, it will either landed or it will have crashed, but it will be on Mars. And any thoughts on the technology? And by the way, Dan, it's got a drone attached to it, so it'll be the first non-Earthbound flying vehicle on another planet. Pretty amazing if it lands correctly.
Yeah, it really feels to me like this should have already happened already. Like, I don't know about you, Jeff, but I kind of thought I would have had my trip to the moon by now, and that doesn't seem all that likely. But this is exciting. Look, if you've read science fiction, a lot of science fiction is based on the idea that eventually we have to leave the Earth to survive as a species. And I kind of believe that. Like, I want to see us, and look, that could just be mining on other planets and resources. And, it's not necessarily going to be Martian cities in our lifetime, but it could be. Like, and I want to see those steps move forward. And I love the fact that it's actually, we have private companies as well as public companies working towards these goals now.
Yeah, I think it's pretty neat, and I'm fingers crossed that when this finally airs, and we won't, again, we're not going to know because it's going to be an hour and 47 minutes until it actually is supposed to hit the ground, lately, hopefully. But I think it's just it's amazing. It was a 7-month trip to Mars, and I think it's, there's certain apertures where the Earth and Mars are relatively close together, and you can make the trip in shorter periods of time. Absolutely amazing. And can you imagine those drone images that come back? I mean, we've all seen great drone footage on YouTube and different video sites. Wouldn't it be amazing to see like a shot above, 1,000 feet in the air above on Mars? Very cool.
I'm excited. I'm hoping we discover the Martian Manhunter. I would like all of these. That is, of course, a comic book reference. The little guy from the Looney Tunes cartoons, that'd be cool too. I just want to see all of this move forward. After the day I've had today, Jeff, I am a big believer in science and technology.
Yeah, I think so. Well, Dan, here's to the next time you and I speak. It'll be exactly a week from now. And I'm looking forward to talking more about this, and hopefully it's all very positive. Until then, Dan, enjoy the rest of your weekend, my friend. And again, thanks for your dedication and volunteership with the people in Florida. And we will talk to you again very soon. Thanks, Dan.
Jeff, I actually volunteered in South Carolina. So,
well,
I'm not that far from you. I'm in Columbia at the moment.
Okay, well, I'm so sorry, Dan. But
No
thank you
problem.
anyway, my friend. Thanks for reminding me. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I appreciate it. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye. Welcome back. Now time to talk a little about real estate, and who knows, probably a lot more. Joining us on the line, he is the real estate reporter for Market Watch. You can read all his great content each and every day, all week long on MarketWatch.com. I'm talking about Jacob Passy. Jacob, great to talk with you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've been talking a lot about interest rates and inventory, but I always come to you for the news in real estate. So what's going on?
Yeah, so this week we got some, economic data. It's kind of that time of the month. So we got data on housing starts, existing home sales. We have our weekly mortgage rate data, and it kind of presents a mixed picture for the the housing market right now. So when we look at housing starts, and that's important, so housing starts is new home construction. So that report comes out each month from the Census Bureau, and it tallies up how many new homes builders started working on, and then it also looks at how many homes were permitted, where they got the approval to build. And so it was kind of a mixed bag. On the one hand, the number of homes that were started, which includes both single-family homes and multifamily buildings, went down in January. So it looks at the previous month. So it went down in January to start the year, which is not what we need, because you and I talk all the time about how the biggest issue in the market right now probably is the inventory situation, at least from a buyer's perspective. But on the flip side, permits went up to the highest level since 2006. So, it looks like, there's going to be a lot of building happening later in the year. It's not happening right now. And that's probably a reflection of two things. Mm-hmm. One, the cold weather, lots of snow across the country in January. And that's probably going to continue in February. You look at a state like Texas, which is, one of the largest housing markets in the country. And high profile markets like Austin, Dallas, Houston. I mean, those markets are pretty much at a standstill right now because of the weather we're seeing there. And that's not even reflected in the report that we just got this week. So, those numbers will be down. But then the good side is, there's and then the other factor I forgot to mention was COVID cases. COVID cases were high in January, are starting to drop as vaccination rates improve. And I know there are still concerns out there about the various variants that are spreading, the South African variant, the UK variant. There's a specific variant unique to California. And it remains to be seen, how effective the vaccine is against those, but still, any decrease in the number of cases is good right now, and that's good for the housing market. So, that should help improve things. But then the permit number was promising. It shows that builders, don't expect, the seasonal issues they're facing in January to remain later in the year. I think it kind of reflects the fact that demand is going to remain high for homes. So that's all good. Existing home sales came out today, Friday, and those were higher than expected and went up to the highest level in the last 3 months, again for January. So showing that, buyers are still out there in full force, scooping up what they can get. But then we look at mortgage rates to take a look at the last kind of important data piece here this week. And mortgage rates went up.
Wow.
And they went up to the highest level since mid-November. And it was a reflection of, it was a reflection of investors' moves, basically. The 10-year Treasury yield, which, helps to influence the interest rates set for 30-year mortgages and 15-year mortgages. The 10-year Treasury yield went up significantly this week in response to positive economic data in terms of retail sales and things like that. And then we have, this kind of growing concern about inflation, and prices are rising for a lot of goods. And if there is inflation across the economy, that's going to be boiled down into mortgage rates, and you will see mortgage rates go higher. So I think the question here is, how much higher can mortgage rates go before they start to really affect home buying activity? And there's some evidence we might be seeing that already. So the Mortgage Bankers Association releases data on mortgage application volumes, and the most recent week that they released data for showed that the number of people requesting mortgages was down. And so that kind of shows that, higher rates are leading to less interest in terms of home buyers, folks refinancing. And so it's not clear yet, if it'll be a massive impact or just kind of at the margins, the folks who might have been able to eke out affording buying a home, no longer being able to. But that'll be a story for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Hey, Jacob, you brought it up when you were talking about some of the economic factors. What about this massive storm? I think over the last couple of days, there's been some power outages in places like Texas. How does that influence buying decisions, or does that influence what people take into account whether or not they want to move. And we've talked about it with you and with others on this program. A lot of people move from Silicon Valley to, say, Austin and other parts of Texas. But what does the weather do in this example to buying sentiment? Or does it do anything? Maybe it doesn't do anything because it's winter.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough call. I think there probably will be some people who, a situation like this gives them pause. Maybe not just because of the weather, but because of how the situation's been handled by local officials, by the utility companies. I mean, I have friends in Texas who have been without power for many days, are talking about their home being, it being 40 degrees inside. So no one wants to live in a situation like that. But it's interesting because, looking to other examples of extreme weather events and the effects they've had, on the one hand, you look at a place like California, and people are still, we talk a lot about the migration out of California, but plenty of people are still moving to California right now, despite the fact that for the past few years, the big story there is the wildfires. And, you saw this past year, you've seen the pictures of the, kind of hellish looking skies over the Bay Area that turned red because of the smoke and things like that. And nevertheless, California remains a popular place. Prices remain strong there, et cetera. You see some weakness maybe in like downtown San Francisco, San Jose, but that's not really because of weather. That's because, remote working is now a possibility. So people don't necessarily feel the need to live in the closest places to their offices as they once might have. Then at the flip side, though, if you look at somewhere like Florida with, hurricanes have, might cause like a small effect in a, localized part of the state when a hurricane hits. But you are seeing some evidence along the coastline that there are, that there are more and more people who are, waking up to the threats of climate change. And there is evidence suggesting that is starting to affect the prices of coastal real estate in Florida. So, I think a one-time weather event like what we're seeing right now in Texas probably won't cause anyone to really change their minds long-term about wanting to live in Texas. But if as some people suggest, this is a reflection of climate change and more wacky weather events like this are going to happen in the future, if we see, these massive cold snaps in Texas year and year and year again, and more snow and things like that, it probably will shift things. I think what's more likely is that, extreme heat will become an issue in a place like Texas. This is certainly a concern you hear from, housing economists when they talk about places like Phoenix and Arizona. Phoenix has become really popular also for folks leaving the Bay Area, but it's in the middle of the desert and it's only getting hotter there. So there might be a point at which it's just no longer a comfortable place to live for most of the year. And at that point, will we see people starting to leave Phoenix, and where will they go?
Yeah, well, our thoughts and prayers are with all those people who are suffering in Texas and other parts of the country dealing with this horrible, horrific cold weather. Hope they get some support. I know they're getting some support. I hope they get as much support as necessary. Jacob, it's always a pleasure chatting with you, and I got to tell you, I am amazed at how quickly you can rattle. I know you do this all day long, but how you're able to rattle off all these stats. I don't know if you're reading. It doesn't sound like you're reading them, but you just have them on the tip of your tongue. It's quite amazing. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we will talk to you again very soon.
Thank you. Take care.
Welcome back. Now time to take a look at what's going on in Capitol Hill. Joining us on the line, they are better known as the Legal Eagles, but we, of course, know them as David Levine, Kevin Walsh. Both are principals with Groom Law Group, an employee benefits law firm based in Washington, D.C. Gentlemen, how are we today?
So we're doing good, and we're thankful we're doing well because we know a whole lot of folks in the country with all the storms recently are struggling. So I think we're going to try to keep it a little more serious today, David, if that's okay with you.
It is, although Kevin, I was immediately going to tease you. You're both doing good and doing well. So you've covered all sides of the grammar spectrum. So thank you.
Very nice. Go ahead, David. Tell us what's top of mind this week.
Sure. Top of mind this week is the DOL exemption that is now moving forward that basically allows investment life advice where you allegedly have a conflict. And I like the word allegedly because it doesn't mean your advice is conflicted, but it addresses the nitty gritty prohibited transaction rules that sometimes create results that, to be honest, outside our wonky ERISA box might seem counterintuitive. They might seem like, well, this should be okay. And ERISA has some pretty strict rules. So sometimes if you're providing services as a fiduciary, you think you're okay, but sometimes disclosure shall not set you free, and there's other requirements that apply. So that's top of mind. How's that for non-succinct, succinct?
That was pretty good, David.
That was very succinct. I thought that was pretty succinct. Kevin, go ahead, Dave.
I'm not done yet. I think I'm going to let Kevin in yet on this. Although he's right. As we record this, there's a lot of people who don't have hot water, so we do hope they get everything back soon.
Yep.
I think, put this way, we've been through a journey of a million miles here of different fiduciary rules, different interpretations, and the Trump administration added their chapter to the saga. The chapter there is we went back to the so-called 5-part test, and we've been through that before. I'm not going to walk through all of that.
And what does the 5-part test do, David? What's its point? Why would I use the 5-part test?
To determine whether or not you are a fiduciary in a plan. And the resumption of the 5-part test led to a sort of principles-based exemption, is the way the DOL would describe it. It doesn't describe one set of facts and circumstances. It says if you do A, B, C, D, and E, and you may have a conflict that is prohibited by ERISA or allegedly prohibited by ERISA, here's the way you can still do it and not trigger any of ERISA's prohibited transaction rules. The reason that gets a lot of attention here is there's also something that goes in front of the exemption. It's called a preamble. In English, it's a document that's like many times longer than the actual text of the exemption that says sort of, this is what DOL is thinking about how this rule works. And a lot of what's gotten the attention in this exemption is the preamble, because there's a lot of interpretations of this 5-part test that has been around for decades that sort of take some more conservative views. And I know Kevin will be eager to jump in. I'm going to say, if you're looking at it, it's important to remember preambles are statements of what the DOL thinks the rule are, but they are not formal law. So the first question is, how far do you need to look at that preamble? Then the question is, do you want to use the exemption and do you need to use it? And third, are there other strategies that if you're doing this? Admittedly, if you're a plan sponsor, you're going to be saying, what does this mean to me? And I think the real world answer is this is how your service providers are going to interact with you. So the real question is to ask them, how do you think you fit in here, and figure out your way forward. But if you're a service provider, thinking about how much do you think that you want to pay attention to the preamble or not, and what do you think it means is something we spend a lot of time talking about. I know Kevin has lots of views on these things, so I just wanted to do best as a lawyer could in English. I'll hand it to Kevin to dive on in here and add the wonk to my not so plain English.
Yeah, David, I thought you summarized it really well. I mean, the exemptions basically, the idea is that under ERISA, and I'm going to make gross simplifications, it's perceived as if you want to get paid for giving advice, then you generally need to have an exemption. So the big news here was that, if you're a fiduciary, if you didn't think you were a fiduciary, now the department has signaled that it thinks that more people might be fiduciaries than have traditionally thought of themselves as fiduciaries, which leaves some scratching their heads thinking, well, I mean, the regulation hasn't changed. What's really changed here? And but then the other aspect of this is that now there is a new exemption, and it along with other exemptions provide avenues for folks who find themselves as fiduciaries, and they would like to get paid for giving advice. And it's important that exemptions exist because absent kind of this type of relief, it would be very tough to provide advice in a professional capacity. So, ERISA is a kind of backward statute. It's a big deal when new exemptions come out. It's a big deal when the department provides more color on who it thinks is a fiduciary, and that's why we're talking about that this week. David, was that a little more succinct? I tried to be less lawyerly this week.
No, and I think you hit it, Kevin. And I think that's kind of the takeaway on all of this.
The takeaway is if you're a plan sponsor, you're probably going to see, some new disclosures, some awkward communications. You're probably going to want to ask your service providers some questions. If you're a service provider, it's a good time to kick the tires on how you're interacting with folks in plans, in rollovers, and in IRAs.
And can I add one little tidbit to wrap it up, Kevin? I think you put it really well. It's important to recognize we talked about this being a very long book with a lot of chapters. This is not the last chapter necessarily. With the Biden administration and new leadership coming into the Department of Labor, it's very possible we could see more chapters in this book that provide sort of more interpretation, more evaluation. So it is our constant adaptation. Again, you're right. Plan sponsors, they just need to see what they get and really try to dig in and understand what does it mean to them. For those providing services, it's worth a look. But as we know, the rules can change, and I wouldn't be surprised if they shift a bit more. Although having this exemption nailed down sort of provides us a little more certainty, and that is the big news of the week.
Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you so much, and I also echo the sentiments you said at the outset, which is we wish everyone a safe weekend and hope that they get their heat, their electricity back as well. Until next week, gentlemen, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we will talk to you again very soon.
Yeah, it's always great being on the show.
Bye, guys. Take care.
Be safe. Bye-bye.
Well, that wraps up this episode of BRN Sunday. So glad you could join us. I want to thank all of our great contributors. Don't forget, we're back again tomorrow for BRN AM. I'll be joined by the Treasurer of Delaware, the Honorable Colleen Davis. So until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.